You waited. Nights stretched long, the silence echoing in the quiet. Each buzz of your phone was a whisper of hope, until one day, it came. A message from the name you once longed for. The words you spent countless nights wishing for. But this time, your hand didn't tremble, your heart didn't race, you didn't rush to open it. Not because you wanted revenge, not because you wanted them to feel what you felt, but because the man they're looking for, he doesn't live here anymore. The message arrives from the one you waited for across 100 nights, but this time you don't rush to open it. Not because you want revenge, but because the person they're searching for no longer exists. The hardest part for the one who comes back isn't your silence. It's the painful truth that they don't recognize you anymore. It's not that you stopped loving them. It's that you've evolved beyond the version of you who once waited, the version who believed that they were the key to your happiness. You've grown, you've matured, and in the process you've refused to return to the place that made you weak. Maturity is refusing to go back to what once made you suffer. This video is for the men who felt the sting of silence, then the confusion of a breadcrumb, the ones who mistook chaos for passion and pain for proof of love. You're not alone in that struggle, but now we're breaking that cycle. In the next few minutes, you'll walk through 7 core truths, truths that most men never speak aloud, truths that will change how you view your pain. By the end of this, you won't need closure, you'll be the closure. Comment to anchor your mindset. I don't chase what walked away. Number 1, you don't need their apology anymore. Some things break in silence, but healing, that begins the moment you stop needing noise. There's a question that follows every heartbreak, quiet but sharp. Will they ever realize what they did to me? And maybe you wouldn't say it out loud, but it lingers in the cracks between your thoughts, in the stillness before sleep. You imagine it, their voice trembling, their words finally admitting what you always knew. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. You picture the text, the call, the sudden visit, not for revenge, not to gloat, just to hear it. To feel like the pain you carried meant something to someone other than you. But let's tell the truth here. What did that hope really give you? Did it ever bring you peace? Or did it just keep you tethered to the same old wound, like a man staring at a locked door, forgetting he has legs? See, here's what no one tells you when your heart breaks. Waiting for an apology is still a form of holding on. It's subtle. It hides under words like closure and respect. But it's still a chain. Still you needing something from someone who already proved they couldn't give it. And brother, that's not healing. That's bargaining with the past. Trying to fix a story that's already been written. You start to think, if they just apologized, I could move on. But that's not how healing works, because what you really want isn't an apology. It's validation. It's for them to look at the pain they caused and finally say, you didn't imagine it. You mattered. But you know what's more powerful than hearing that from them? Believing it without them. Because when you finally stop waiting, you reclaim something you didn't even realize you lost. Your time, your energy, your self-respect. You remember what the Stoics said. Don't seek things to happen as you wish, but wish for them as they are. You stop arguing with reality. You stop needing the ending to be rewritten. You write a new beginning instead, one that doesn't need a prologue. And here's the deeper truth. Even if they do apologize, even if they say everything you imagined, on those sleepless nights, it won't hit the way you thought it would, because you've grown. And the man you are now doesn't speak the same language as the one who was hurt. You don't want their words anymore. You want your peace. Apologies. Our words, peace is action, and letting go of needing one. That's a kind of freedom they don't teach you in movies. So no, you don't need them to say, "I'm sorry," because you already said what needed to be said to yourself. You said, "I deserve better," and you believed it. This isn't about bitterness. This isn't about ego. This is about walking past the wreckage without needing the person who lit the match to explain why they dropped it. You're not holding your breath anymore. You're breathing. You're not waiting for closure. You are closure. And the most silent, powerful truth of all? Apologies. Can't rebuild a version of you that's already gone. You're not that man anymore. And that's the real healing. Number 2, you see through the fantasy. This isn't nostalgia, it's amnesia for the red flags. What hurts more than being left is realizing how long you stayed blind. You don't talk about it much, but late at night, it visits you. Those soft, focused memories, the smile that made you forget how often you were crying, the way they said your name like it was home. Until it wasn't, you replay the best parts, the early days, the warmth, the laughter, the rush of being needed, the illusion that this was love. But here's the part you don't always face. You weren't remembering them. You were remembering the version of them you built to survive what they actually were. There's a kind of grief that comes when you realize you didn't lose something real. You lost something imagined. And that grief, it cuts even deeper, because how do you mourn something that wasn't ever solid? How do you stop loving someone who never actually existed, except in your hope? You see, this is the trap. Heartbreak doesn't just steal your future, it hijacks your memory. It turns pain into poetry. It edits the film to remove the scenes where you were begging to be understood, shrinking yourself to avoid another argument, walking on eggshells in a house that was supposed to be your peace. You called it passion. But passion doesn't leave you doubting your own sanity. You called it deep. But deep love doesn't drown you. You told yourself you were lucky, but love doesn't make you question your worth to feel wanted. Here's the truth. The one the silence kept trying to whisper to you, you weren't in love. You were in a fantasy. And fantasies aren't based on who someone is. They're based on who you needed them to be, and maybe you needed them to be someone better because you hadn't yet become someone strong enough to walk away from less. That's not weakness. That's survival. That's you doing what you knew how to do at the time, which was hold on. Even if it hurt, but now you see the full film. The part where they laughed when you were vulnerable, the moment they punished your honesty, the way you apologized just to keep the peace, even when you did nothing wrong. You see how your soul dimmed, just so their light wouldn't feel threatened. And that's not love. That's emotional starvation in a golden cage. The Stoics taught this. You suffer more in imagination than in reality. You weren't just mourning the relationship. You were mourning the illusion, and illusions are addictive because they sell us comfort. They sell us a version of events that make us feel less foolish, less used, less broken. But freedom begins the moment you stop romanticizing your own suffering, the moment you say, that wasn't love. That was fear dressed up in chemistry. That was needing to be chosen more than needing to be respected. You're allowed to remember the good moment, but don't build your future from the ruins of what you wanted to be true. Build it from what actually was. Build it from truth, no matter how ugly, no matter how hard, because there's a quiet power in seeing clearly, in watching the full film, and not flinching, not editing, not rewriting. You see it all now, and because of that, you're free. This isn't nostalgia. It's amnesia for the red flags. And you're finally wide awake. Number 3, you understand their return isn't about you. Their reach isn't love. It's a search for what they couldn't give themselves. It hits you differently when they come back. Not the way you imagined, with roses, regret, or redemption, but with that late-night message, the casual, "Hey, touch us, how have you been?" As if nothing ever happened, as if your heart wasn't dragged through every room you once called love, and for a split second, something flickers in you. Not hope, not anger, but confusion, because part of you thought this would feel like a win, that their return was proof you mattered, proof they finally saw it and what they had, what they lost. But the older you get, the more you learn. Not every return is reconciliation. Not every "I miss you" is rooted in love. Sometimes it's just loneliness with good timing. And brother, here's the quiet truth. It was never about you. You think they came back because you grew, because you healed, because you became someone they could finally love. Right. But that's not what happened. What happened is that something in their life got quiet. The distractions wore off, the noise dimmed, and when they looked around, they didn't see you. They saw the version of themselves they felt safest around. You weren't their home, you were their escape. And that doesn't mean you weren't worthy. It means they weren't ready. Not for you. Not for the kind of depth your love required. Because love, real love, asks something dangerous of people. Self-awareness, accountability, growth. Most people don't return to make amends. They return to make themselves feel less broken. They don't want to fix what was lost. They want to believe it wasn't their fault it fell apart. So they reach, not for you, but for who they were when they were with you. The feeling, the safety, the version of themselves that didn't feel so hollow. And you start to feel the pull, because your heart remembers the way they held you, even if your mind remembers why it ended. But this time, something's changed. You don't move the same, you don't need the same, because now you know when someone reaches back out, you don't ask what they want, you ask what version of you they remember. And, more importantly, if that version still exists, the Stoics taught this. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. So judge clearly. Their message is not validation. Their presence is not proof. Their return is not redemption. It's just a chapter trying to rewrite itself in a book you've already put down. And maybe they mean well, maybe they're sincere, but sincerity isn't the same as compatibility, and kindness isn't the same as alignment. You are not the emotional rehab center for someone else's self-discovery. You are not a pit stop on the road to their better self. You are not a second chance to avoid doing the work. So you don't need to answer with bitterness. You don't need to block them with anger. You just need to understand. Their reach isn't love. It's a search for what they couldn't give themselves. And that search, it's no longer your responsibility to complete. Let them reach. Let them search. But you stay still, grounded, knowing that your worth was never in their return. It was in how you chose not to go back. That's not silence, that's self-respect. And that, my brother, is power. Number 4, you lost interest in proving yourself. You don't need their eyes to feel seen. There's a moment after heartbreak, quiet, almost imperceptible, when your pain tries to turn into performance. You catch yourself in the mirror, so little longer, at the gym a little harder, on your stories a little more curated, because somewhere in the back of your mind there's a voice whispering, what if they're watching? What if they see what they let go? What if they regret it? What if this time they realize I was the one? It's not ego at first, it's ache. It's the soft ache of wanting to be valued by the one who discarded you when your heart was still soft and open, so you start living like a billboard, not a man. Like everything you do needs an audience, a proof of life post to say, look at me, I'm not broken, I'm better. Aren't you sorry? But let's tell the truth. That energy, it's still about them. You've just turned your healing into a play, and the stage lights burn your peace because performing worth is exhausting. And when your life becomes a response, you're still in reaction. You're still tethered, and brother, you weren't built to perform. You were built to be. This is what they don't tell you in the highlight reels. There is no freedom in chasing the approval of ghosts. There is no power in winning a race. No one's watching. And here's the cruel irony. Even if they do see you now, even if they scroll through your glow-up, your upgrades, your newfound strength, they'll never see the version of you that broke quietly in private. They'll never see the nights you stitched yourself together with podcasts, prayers, and pain. And that's okay, because your healing isn't a PR campaign. Your progress isn't for their consumption. You don't need to win the breakup, you need to leave it. The Stoics taught us this. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. That harmony doesn't come from applause. It comes from detachment. You lose interest in proving yourself, not because you gave up, but because you woke up to the truth that you were never unworthy, that what happened was not a referendum on your value, but a reflection of their capacity, and no amount of new outfits, new achievements, or filtered happiness can fill the silence of someone who didn't see you when it counted. So now, you live fully, quietly, without angles, without performance, because your joy is not bait, your success is not a message, your peace is not a trophy. You stop proving and start being. You stop shining for them and start resting in your own light. And that's the moment it shifts, not with fireworks, not with applause, but with an inner stillness so loud, it humbles the noise. Because when you're no longer trying to be seen, you finally see yourself. You don't need their eyes to feel seen. You never did, and now you know. Number 5, you're no longer attracted to the chaos. What you mistook for chemistry was just survival mode. There's a silence that comes after the storm, not just outside, in your home, in your phone, but inside. And for the first time in a long time, you're not panicking because things are calm. You're learning how to breathe in it. But before this, you lived off adrenaline, the back and forth, the I love you followed by silence, the apologies followed by the same fights on loop. You told yourself it was passion, that the fire was what made it real. But deep down, you were confusing intensity with intimacy. You were calling chaos chemistry because the drama felt familiar, and familiar felt like home. Even when it hurt, let's say it plainly, you were addicted to the rush, to the highs that made you feel chosen, to the lows that made you chase that feeling all over again. It was like emotional gambling. Sometimes you'd win, most times you'd lose, but every time you played. And why? Because somewhere in your story, you were taught that love is something you earn, not something you rest in. That relationships aren't safe havens, they're battlegrounds, tests, something to prove yourself through. So you stayed in the chaos because the stillness felt foreign, boring, and empty. But here's the quiet revolution. Peace isn't boring. It's foreign to the parts of you still healing, the parts that don't know what to do when no one's yelling, when there's no one to fix, when there's no drama to chase. You've started to see it now. The way you used to equate being needed with being loved, the way you felt most alive when everything was on the edge of collapse, the way chaos disguised itself as connection. But love doesn't ask you to bleed to be worthy. It doesn't spike your cortisol and call it caring. It doesn't burn you and then hand you the water. Real love feels steady, calm, predictable in the best way, not because it's dull, but because it doesn't require you to abandon yourself just to keep it alive. The Stoics taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And what's more uncontrollable than someone else's chaos? You don't need to fix anyone anymore. You don't need the roller coaster. You've come to realize that peace, the thing you once ran from, is the very thing you've been dying for. Now when chaos knocks, you don't mistake it for excitement. You recognize it for what it is, emotional noise dressed in old patterns, begging to be repeated. But you're not that man anymore. The one who needed the drama to feel alive, the one who equated anxiety with affection. You've tasted silence, and for the first time, it doesn't scare you, because now you know that love isn't supposed to be war, and connection doesn't require casualties. So you stop chasing, stop fixing, stop breaking yourself just to feel needed. You find comfort in the quiet, you find rhythm in the calm, and in the stillness, you finally find you. What you mistook for chemistry was just survival mode. And survival, that's no longer your definition of love. Number 6, you let the memory fade without bitterness. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about not bleeding every time their name is mentioned. There's a weight that lingers long after they've gone, not the weight of their presence, but the echo of it, their voice in your head when you're alone, their ghost in every song you once shared, their shadow in every memory you still visit. As if re-watching the scene might somehow change the ending, you tell yourself, you just want clarity, closure, answers, but really, you're still trying to rewrite the pain. You're still reaching for a reason that would make it all make sense, and that's okay. That's human. That's what pain does. It demands meaning. It wants someone to blame, someone to carry. The fault so you can carry less. So maybe for a while, you made them the villain, and maybe some days, you made yourself the fool. You replayed it again and again, the arguments, the silence, the look in their eyes when they started drifting. You search for the moment it shifted, for the sentence that broke everything, for the reason you weren't enough, or why they weren't, but eventually you get tired, not bitter, not broken, just tired. Of being the detective in a case that's already closed, of bleeding from a wound you keep reopening just to remember how it hurt. And that's when it happens. You stop needing to win the story. You stop needing to label yourself as the victim or them as the villain. You stop needing to keep it alive just to prove it mattered. Because some endings don't need explanation. They just need space. Some stories aren't meant to be solved, just shelved with gratitude, even if it was painful. The Stoics taught us to bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. So you let it fade, not by force but by softness. You stop bringing their name into every conversation. You stop checking if they've seen your stories. You stop measuring your worth by how little they've changed or how much they've moved. And because healing isn't about proving you're unaffected. It's about being unburdened. It's about being able to say their name and feel nothing behind your ribs. That's not indifference, that's liberation. You forgive, not because they asked, not because they deserved it, but because you deserve peace. And peace only lives where resentment doesn't. So now, when their memory floats through, you nod. You don't fight it, you don't analyze it, you don't let it anchor you. You let it pass, like a cloud, like breath, like time. And that's how you know. You're free. Not because you forgot, but because you remembered and chose not to suffer from it anymore. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about not bleeding every time their name is mentioned. You're done bleeding. You're done begging the past for peace. You've stepped into it, quiet, clear, unshakable. And now you walk forward, light. Number 7. You don't wish them pain. You just don't wish them back. You're not cold. You're just finally warm enough not to crave their fire. There's a quiet truth that settles in after the storm has passed. It isn't loud. It doesn't shout or demand your attention, but it's the kind of truth that makes everything else feel still. You stop wishing for their suffering. You stop wanting them to feel the weight of their choices. You stop hoping they'll realize what they lost or regret the way they walked away. And that's the shift, isn't it? You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're not out for revenge. The fire that once burned in your chest, the fire that used to drive you to check your phone one more time, the fire that kept you tied to their name, the fire that kept you small, afraid to move forward without their approval, it's gone. And what's left now? A warmth that comes from within. Not the heat of a chase, not the desperation of someone still lost in the fight, but the steady, quiet warmth of a man who finally knows his worth. The kind of warmth that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. Kind that burns steady, slow and real. You don't wish them pain because you realize it's not about them anymore. It was never about them. It was about you. You see, the version of you who would have stayed, who would have begged, who would have tolerated scraps just to feel chosen. He's gone. And thank God for that. That version of you, the one who accepted excuses, who convinced himself that love was something he had to earn. He's faded into the past, replaced by a man who understands what it means to value himself. That's what true healing feels like. It's not about hating them. It's about understanding that the love you gave them, the love you gave anyone, was never meant to come at the cost of your own peace. It was meant to be shared. It was meant to be honored. And when it wasn't, you finally found the courage to let it go. You stopped believing in the story that, you weren't enough unless they recognized your worth. You stopped chasing validation in someone else's eyes, and that's when the real freedom began. You don't need them to feel small anymore. You don't need them to see your strength. You don't need them to regret their choices, because you've already moved forward, and in doing so, you've stopped needing to look back. The Stoics said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And you know now that the pain of them walking away was never the real suffering. The suffering was in the belief that they were the key to your happiness. The suffering was in the idea that you needed their love to complete you. But now you understand that you are whole. You always have been. And when you think of them, there's no bitterness, there's no longing. There's just a calm, quiet understanding. You simply don't need them in your life anymore. And that's not cruelty. It's clarity. You've outgrown the need for chaos, outgrown the need for someone who couldn't see you for who you truly are. You don't wish them pain, because you've learned that holding on to anger only keeps you tied to the past. You wish them healing, you wish them growth, but you don't wish them back. Not because you're angry, but because you've learned what peace feels like, and you know you deserve more than the scraps they offered. And here's the quiet power of that truth. You don't need to burn bridges. You don't need to wish them harm. You just need to walk away, silently and fully, knowing that the best version of your life is waiting for you beyond the door you just closed. You're not cold. You're just finally warm enough not to crave their fire. And that warmth, it's enough. It will always be enough. You've changed, and that change isn't loud, it's not flashy, it's not something anyone can measure or quantify, but it's there, inside you, in the way your heart doesn't race when you see their name, in the way your thoughts no longer wander back to what was, in the way you now know peace isn't something to find, but something to choose. You've come to understand that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about accepting it. It's about choosing to no longer be defined by someone else's actions. It's about knowing that your worth was never attached to their approval. And now when they reach out, you don't feel desperate. You don't feel incomplete, because you finally see you were never broken. You were just waiting to remember your strength. This chapter, this part of your story, it's done. And it's okay to let it go. It's okay to stop turning the pages, because you're not living in that chapter anymore. You're living in the one you're writing now. The one where you are the hero of your own journey. The one where your peace comes first. This isn't about winning. This isn't about showing them you're fine or making them feel what you felt. It's not about revenge. It's about walking away, not to punish them, but to protect what you've built, your peace, your clarity, your worth. And walking away, that's not weakness, that's strength. That's emotional control, that's growth. You are not the same man who once stood in the chaos, chasing after the unkind, needing the validation of someone who never saw your value. Now, you walk. In silence, you walk in strength, you walk for you. Comment, I am not who I used to be. Subscribe if you're walking away in silence, not to prove a point, but to protect your peace.